War, natural disasters, or economic crises often do not empty supermarkets immediately. But one thing happens very quickly. Familiar foods begin to disappear from the shelves. Today, we will talk about 5 types of food, not all of them, only the most important ones. What is notable is that in most food crises throughout history, from wars to long power outages, people usually return to just a few basic foods. Not hundreds of different kinds. Just a small number of things simple enough, durable enough, and reliable enough to sustain life. Things that may look very ordinary in the kitchen, but in many difficult situations, they become the foundation of a meal. 5. Rice. The first thing to disappear in most food crises, something quite interesting usually happens. When people start to worry about supply, when news about transportation disruptions or shortages appears, the foods that disappear from supermarket shelves first are usually not candy, snacks, or processed foods. The things that disappear first are often the simplest foods. In 2020, when the food supply chain in many places in the United States began to experience short disruptions, many supermarkets showed the same image. Rice shelves that were normally always full suddenly became empty. The last bags of rice were quickly taken, while many other foods were still sitting on the shelves. That does not happen because rice is everyone's favorite food. In fact, many people do not even eat rice regularly in their daily lives. But during times of uncertainty, people often return to the most simple and reliable foods. And rice is almost always on that list. 1 cup of dry rice, once cooked, can provide more than 600 calories. 1 pound of rice contains about 1,600 calories. That means even a simple bag of rice can become the foundation for many meals. But what makes rice important is not just the energy it provides. What makes rice special is its stability. Unlike many other foods, rice does not require refrigeration. It does not need a freezer or complicated storage equipment. As long as it is kept dry and sealed, rice can last for a very long time. In long-term storage systems, when rice is sealed in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, it can be stored for 25 to 30 years and still remain usable. That is why many experienced food stockpilers always begin with rice. They understand that when supply chains start to slow down, when supermarkets begin running short, or when food prices rise faster than income, a simple bag of rice can stretch a family's meals for many weeks. A man in Texas once shared his family's experience during the major winter storm in 2021. When the storm hit, temperatures dropped sharply and the electricity disappeared for several days. Stores in the area closed because the streets were covered in ice, and many families had to stay inside waiting for the power system to be restored. In their kitchen, the family still had plenty of food, but most of those foods required refrigeration or needed a lot of fuel to cook. Once the power went out, many items in the refrigerator began to spoil, and preparing complex meals became much more difficult. In the end, the thing they used the most was a large bag of rice sitting in the corner of the kitchen cabinet. Every evening they cooked a simple pot of rice. Some days they ate it with eggs. Other days they added only a little salt or a small amount of canned beans. It was not the best meal they had ever had, but it was what kept the entire family going while everything around them became uncertain. There was one moment he said he would never forget. One evening, while the snow still covered everything outside and the electricity had not yet returned, his daughter sat in front of a bowl of hot rice and said something very simple. At least they still had food. It was only a bowl of rice. But in that moment, it brought a feeling that very few other foods could provide. Stability. That is also the role rice plays in most food storage systems. It is not a perfect food, and it is not something people usually show off to others. But when there is rice in the kitchen, you always have a starting point for a meal. Rice can be combined with almost anything else you have in the house. A few vegetables, an egg, a little meat, or even just some oil and salt can turn a simple pot of rice into a complete meal. However, many beginners in food storage make a very common mistake. They buy a lot of convenience foods and packaged meals, but they do not have enough foundational foods. When those quick meals run out, they suddenly realize that their kitchen is missing the most important thing. A foundation for meals, rice is not glamorous, and it is not something people brag about. But in many food crises throughout history, from wars to natural disasters, rice has often been one of the last things remaining on store shelves. And sometimes, in uncertain times, the line between calm and panic inside a household is simply whether they still have rice left to cook. 4. Beans. The strength of the body. Have you ever wondered what would happen if one day you had to live mostly on the food stored in your home? Not for 1 or 2 days, but for many days in a row. There is still rice in the kitchen. You can still cook a hot pot of rice every evening. Your stomach is full, but after a few days, something in your body begins to feel different. You feel more tired than usual. Simple tasks like carrying a bucket of water, cleaning the house, or walking a short distance start to drain your energy much faster. Not because you are lacking calories, but because your body is starting to lack protein. This is something many people only realize when they actually go through a period of repetitive eating. Carbohydrates help you feel full, but protein is what helps the body maintain strength. It is the building material for muscles, for the immune system, and for the body's ability to recover after exhaustion. And that is why in many long-term food storage systems, beans always appear. Beans are not a luxury food. They are not the first thing people think of when talking about food storage. But if you look at history, beans have helped sustain human life through many difficult times. An interesting example comes from the days of ancient Rome. In the Roman army, soldiers often had to march dozens of kilometers every day. They carried heavy weapons, built camps, dug defensive trenches, and sometimes fought continuously for weeks. Their living conditions were harsh, and the food they carried had to meet a very simple requirement. It had to be easy to store and nutritious enough to maintain their strength. Their rations usually revolved around 3 things: wheat, beans, and a little olive oil. If you imagine that scene, you can picture an evening in a military camp. After a long day of marching, a pot of bean soup is boiling over a small fire. The soldiers sit around it, eating thick soup with coarse bread made from wheat. It was not a luxurious meal, but it was enough to help them stand up the next day and march dozens of kilometers again. What is interesting is that this combination was not random. Wheat provided energy from carbohydrates, while beans provided protein. 2 very simple foods, but when combined, they could provide nearly all the essential amino acids the human body needs. 1 cup of cooked beans can provide about 15 grams of protein. When eaten with rice or grains, that meal becomes a nearly complete source of nutrition. This helps explain why in many cultures around the world, basic meals often revolve around 2 very familiar foods: rice and beans. Not because it is the most delicious meal, but because it works. But beans are not only valuable for their nutrition, they are also one of the most durable foods that humans can store. Dry beans can last for a very long time if stored properly. When kept in a dry, cool, and sealed environment, many types of beans can be stored for 20 to 30 years without refrigeration or electricity. That makes beans one of the most reliable foods in long-term storage systems. However, many people who are new to food storage often overlook beans. They focus on foods that provide quick calories, such as noodles, rice, or grains. Those foods are very important, but if the body lacks protein for a long time, it will gradually lose its endurance. And in long-lasting situations, the endurance of the body is what truly matters. After understanding this, I began to look at the simple foods in the kitchen in a different way. A bag of dry beans is no longer just a cooking ingredient. It is more like a part of a system that helps the body maintain strength when other food sources begin to become scarce. If rice helps you avoid hunger, beans help your body avoid weakening. And if you look back at history, from the camps of the ancient Roman army to the difficult economic periods of many families, simple pots of beans have appeared in many kitchens. Not because they are special, but because when everything else begins to become scarce, people always return to the foods that can keep them standing the longest. If you find analyses like this useful, press like so more people can find this video. And if you are interested in content about food storage and how to prepare for difficult periods, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next videos. 3. Oatmeal. Fast energy. Did you know there is a food that has sustained humans for thousands of years, with nothing more than water, no large kitchen, no heavy fuel, and sometimes not even cooking? That food is oatmeal. In many emergency situations, the problem is not always the lack of food. The real problem is that you may not have enough time or fuel to prepare a full meal. When power outages last for days, when you have to leave home quickly, or when every time you cook, you must think about how much fuel remains. Foods that require long cooking times suddenly become difficult to use. That is when the simplest foods become the most important. With just a little hot water, a bowl of dry oats can turn into a meal within minutes. No complicated preparation, no long list of ingredients. And in certain emergency situations, oats can even be soaked in cold water and still be eaten. That makes it one of the fastest and most reliable sources of energy. Imagine a quiet morning during a power outage. The kitchen feels different. There is no sound from the coffee machine, no electric stove heating up. But a small kettle on a gas burner or a portable stove is still enough to prepare a hot meal in just a few minutes. In that moment, a simple bowl of oatmeal can provide more than just calories. It brings a feeling that the new day can still begin normally. What is interesting is that oatmeal is not a modern nutrition trend. Archaeologists have found traces of oats in ancient settlements in Europe dating back more than 3,000 years. In the beginning, oats were simply a plant that grew among fields of wheat and barley. But in the cold and damp lands of northern Europe, where many other grains struggled to grow, oats thrived quite well. Over time, many communities began cultivating it as a main food source. By the time of ancient Rome, oats were already mentioned in agricultural records. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder once wrote that many tribes in northern Europe lived mostly on oats, because it was one of the few grains that could grow reliably in cold climates. For many centuries after that, oatmeal porridge became a common meal for farmers, shepherds, and heavy laborers in Scotland and Scandinavia. There is an interesting record from the 18th century about a Scottish farmer. Every morning before going to the fields, he would eat a bowl of hot oatmeal porridge. One day his son asked why he ate the same thing every single day. The farmer gave a very simple answer: because it lets me work until evening without collapsing in the field. Not a complicated answer, but it explains perfectly why oats have lasted for so long. A serving of oatmeal provides complex carbohydrates and fiber, helping the body release energy slowly and steadily. Unlike sugary foods that cause energy to rise quickly and then crash, oatmeal helps maintain steady energy for many hours. That is why it still appears in the diets of many people who need endurance: farmers, athletes, and heavy laborers. But in long-term food storage systems, the value of oatmeal also lies in something else: flexibility. Oatmeal can be eaten simply with water. But when more ingredients are available, it can also become a richer meal. A little honey, dried fruit, powdered milk, or nuts can turn a simple bowl of oatmeal into a full breakfast. In difficult situations, the more flexible a food is, the more valuable it becomes. A bag of dry oats can also be stored for quite a long time if kept in a dry and sealed environment. It is light, easy to carry, and does not require complicated storage conditions. This makes it a familiar part of many food storage systems. After understanding this, many people begin to see oatmeal in a different way. It is no longer just a breakfast food. It becomes a reliable source of energy when time, fuel, and resources start to become limited. If rice helps you avoid hunger, and beans help your body maintain strength, then oatmeal is what helps you stand up and continue a new day even when everything around you has changed. And if you look back through history, from the cold stone houses of Scotland to the long journeys of poor laborers, when other foods disappeared from the table, oatmeal was often the last thing left in the kitchen. 2. Flour. The foundation of a real meal. Humans can survive on calories, but it is very difficult to maintain morale without a real meal. Not just calories, not just something to fill the stomach, but something that makes you feel like you are truly eating a meal. In many cultures around the world, there is one ingredient that always appears when people want to turn simple things into a complete meal. That ingredient is flour. With just flour and water, you can create many things: bread, baked goods, flatbread, noodles, or simple cakes cooked on a pan. It does not require many ingredients, and it does not require complicated recipes. With only 2 basic components, humans have been able to create food that could sustain a family for many days. And this has been happening for thousands of years. Archaeologists have found traces of bread in ancient civilizations in the Middle East, dating back more than 5,000 years. In ancient Egypt, bread was not only food, but also part of the economic system. Workers who built the pyramids were often paid with bread and beer. That tells us something very clearly. Bread is not just a food, it is the foundation of a meal. In many difficult periods of history, bread almost became a symbol of survival. When food was scarce, when winters were long, or when wars disrupted supply, families were still able to sustain their lives thanks to simple loaves of bread. There is a record from Europe during wartime showing that many families had very few ingredients in their kitchens. But if they still had flour, they could still bake simple flatbreads on a pan or in an oven. And that created a very different feeling. Not just eating to survive, but eating a real meal. There is a small story told from the time of the Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s. A mother used to make bread every evening, even though ingredients were very limited. She mixed flour with water and a little salt, then baked small loaves in the oven. One day, her child asked why she still made bread every day even though the house had very little food. The mother answered very simply, "Because when the house still smells like bread, we still feel like we are okay." That is what flour brings. Not just calories, but the feeling of a familiar meal. From a nutritional perspective, flour provides a large amount of carbohydrates, helping the body have energy to function. But the true value of flour in a food storage system lies in its ability to transform. A bag of flour can become many different kinds of food. When combined with water, oil, or yeast, it can create bread. When rolled thin and cooked quickly on a pan, it becomes flatbread. When mixed with eggs or water, it can become noodles. That flexibility is what makes flour one of the most important ingredients in many food storage systems. After understanding this, many people begin to look at flour in a different way. It is not just a baking ingredient. It is a foundation that allows you to turn simple ingredients into a complete meal. During difficult periods, this can create a very large difference, because sometimes what people need is not just energy, but the feeling that they can still sit down and eat a real meal. But there is still one more food on this list, something much simpler. No cooking required, no preparation required, and it can provide energy almost immediately. That is the final item. 1. Peanut butter. Concentrated energy in many crises. What helps people keep going is sometimes not a large meal, but just a few small spoonfuls of concentrated energy. Some foods require cooking, some foods require water, but there is one food that requires almost nothing at all. Just open the lid. That is peanut butter. In many food storage systems, people often think of rice, beans, oats, or flour. Those foods form the foundation of a meal. But in reality, there are moments when you do not have enough time to prepare anything. When you are moving, when water becomes limited, or when the body is too tired to cook, that is when foods that can be eaten immediately become extremely important. 1 spoonful of peanut butter can provide nearly 200 calories thanks to its high fat and protein content. Fat is the most concentrated energy source the body can use, about 9 calories per gram, nearly double compared to carbohydrates. That means just one small jar can contain thousands of calories. No preparation required, no cooking required, no water required, just a spoon. Imagine a very real situation. After many hours of work or movement, the body begins to lose strength. You open a backpack or a kitchen cabinet. There is no stove, no pot, no time to cook. You open a jar of peanut butter and just a few small spoonfuls begin to bring energy back to the body. That scene is so simple that many people barely notice it. But in difficult situations, that kind of simplicity can create a very big difference. In fact, peanut butter is not a new product of the modern supermarket. In the late 19th century, doctors in the United States began developing it as a food that was easy to digest, but rich in energy for patients who could not chew meat. After that, people quickly realized a practical fact. This was one of the most energy-dense foods, yet also one of the easiest to use. During World War II, many American soldiers had to march for hours without the opportunity to cook. Some historical photographs in Europe show a scene of an American infantry soldier sitting by the roadside after many hours of movement. He removes his backpack and opens his ration. There is no stove. There is no hot water. Only dry bread and a jar of peanut butter. He spreads a thick layer of peanut butter on the bread, eats a few quick bites, then stands up and continues marching with his unit. That was not a delicious meal, but it was enough to help the body keep moving for many more hours. In harsh conditions, immediate energy is sometimes more important than anything else. That is also why peanut butter gradually became one of the familiar foods in many storage systems. It requires no preparation, no tools, and can provide a large amount of energy in a small quantity. You can eat it directly, spread it on bread, mix it with oats, or combine it with many other foods to increase the calories of a meal. People with long experience in food storage often keep at least a few jars in their reserves. Not because it is a perfect food, but because in certain moments, when you have no water, no stove, and no time to prepare, a spoon and a jar of peanut butter can sometimes be enough to help the body keep going a little farther. And if you look back at this list, each food has its own role. Rice helps keep you from going hungry. Beans help the body maintain strength. Oats provide quick energy. Flour helps create a real meal. And peanut butter? It is not a meal. It is emergency energy. And on some difficult days, those few small spoonfuls might be the only thing that keeps you from collapsing. If you found this video helpful, press like so more people can find it. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss the next videos. And I am also quite curious, out of these foods, how many do you already have at home? Rice, beans, oats, flour, peanut butter, just 5 very simple foods. But when placed together, they create a meal system that can provide carbohydrates, protein, fat, and the ability to create real meals. Not a perfect food list, but a reliable foundation. And I am quite curious about one thing. If you could only keep one of these 5 foods in your kitchen, which one would you choose? Write your answer in the comments section. And if this video is helpful, press like and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, what helps a family get through difficult days is not complicated foods, but simply things that are very basic, yet always available in the kitchen.